Hey everybody, it's Jeff. We're back for another edition of Revenue Marketing Raw. And today we're talking about the MQL, but not the reincarnation of the MQL, how people are measuring the MQL, but the MQL is dead, gone. Sorry, Serious Decisions. Sorry, everybody that's still measuring this. It does not work anymore in 2026. I'd love for some of you to argue counter. I'm sure some of you will. But the reality is the landscape is changing faster than it's ever been before. So first, CFOs, they've always been pretty savvy, but they're getting smarter by the month, smarter by the year. And they look at all these MQL measurements and they ask, well, how much revenue? Where's the revenue? How much can you tie this to revenue? And in almost every case, marketers cannot answer that question. So it's been really difficult for marketing to answer that question, how much we've actually closed, which is why marketing is perpetually under assault when they are measuring leads and the rest of the organization is measuring revenue. So, that inability to really specifically define in ROI terms and revenue terms is what's really killing the MQL. So, we spent the better part of 20 years measuring this. We built lead scoring models, right? We looked at demographics, we looked at behavioral data. And in the beginning, when there was only one or two buyers, it probably could accurately measure intent. But in today's landscape, it really doesn't. And there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, most MQL scoring is based upon activity that happens on our own website and with our own channels like email, etc. It also looks into demographic factors like revenue and size and all those things. But it doesn't look at intent in all these other channels, the Reddit, Quora, the dark web, LLMs, all these other places. So you're using a scoring model that's horribly outdated. And in most cases, marketers have not updated their lead scoring model in years. So that's one problem. Second problem is, at least in B2B anyway, most of us don't sell to a single buyer. You're selling to buying committees, 8, 10, 15 people. And so if we're even lucky that a salesperson attaches a person to the opportunity, and half the time they still don't in 2026. So you think about those numbers. Half of all opportunities have no context added to them. Marketing markets to people, and sales is closing deals. So 50% right off the bat don't even have any contacts that are associated with that deal. Then the other 50% where there is a contact, it's one. The salesperson's adding one person. But if we're marketing to 5, 10, 15, 20 people, where are all those other people? How are we getting those associated to the deal? So that MQL that we're using as a proxy is statistically completely insignificant. So it really is not measuring the right things at all. And then, again, with all the nuances of buying behavior and all the stats showing that it could be 15, 20, 30 touches per person. And then you multiply that times n number of people on the buying committee, the scoring models that we're using is hopefully out of date. So that's a big part of the problem. And so we're using really an invalid, outdated model to forecast direction. And we're running and we're building all these campaigns, and we're trying to generate MQLs, and we're using these outdated funnel conversion metrics. And in almost every case, it just doesn't work anymore. For the few of you that are out there that are still nailing it, congratulations, you're in rarefied air. But the reality is most people just are not getting it right. So that's a big reason that's happening. And then, when you factor in all the budget pressures, which is no secret what's been happening in B2B marketing over the last 3 years, do more with less. Marketing budgets are getting slashed, even in tech. And really the focus now has been more about pipeline contribution, cross-selling, upselling into the customer base, driving more revenue, less about leads. So, boards are scrutinizing, finance executive teams are scrutinizing marketing budget. And so we have to drive this ROI. And so it's really, we've always been under pressure by finance for the better part of 15 or 20 years, but never more so. The microscope over these last couple of years has been intense for many marketing leaders. So that's been a big challenge. So if we acknowledge, or at least most of us can acknowledge, that the MQL is dead and it's not working, of course, the show wouldn't be any fun if everybody agreed. But if we say, all right, what are we going to replace the MQL with? And it really is pipeline first metrics and revenue metrics. Marketing and sales should be working together to go for the win, right? And we're trying to get net new revenue, and we're trying to upsell and cross-sell revenue from the base. Those are really the main metrics. But then when we get into pipeline, let's focus on the pipeline sourced and pipeline influenced versus leads generated, because pipeline has dollar value to it, leads do not, right? Leads is an artificial conversion metric. So, but if we can look at total pipeline created, that's a different number. We can also look at deal velocity, sales cycle length. When marketing programs are getting involved and working with sales, are we accelerating the sales cycle versus not? Let's look at the deal cycle, deal volume, and deal velocity when marketing's not involved. And then let's look at it when it is involved, and then what's the difference? And let's see if marketing can actually really have a positive impact on shortening that. We could also look at win rate by channel, which is probably better for the marketing mix than the overall win for the company, because there are so many channels now. And you really can't pinpoint one single touch, but at least as far as where marketing spends its money, analyzing the marketing mix is helpful to move your dollars around. And then really getting these metrics nailed down goes back to good data, getting your CRM cleaned up, working closely with your marketing automation platform, right? And these are just the basics. So those are some of the things that we really should be focusing on as we go into 2026. Attribution is still hotly debated. And while everyone would love full funnel attribution, multi-touch attribution, that would be the holy grail. But it's also the hairball at the same time, because in reality, it is very, very difficult to do, if not impossible in most cases. Why? We have all these siloed systems, siloed data. We have all these buyers that we talked about. Well, if these buyers aren't getting into the system in the first place, even if you had a good attribution model that you were proud of, what are you running it on? There's no data to run your models on, right? So it makes it really hard to actually do that. Plus, there's just ongoing disagreement about actually how to do attribution the right way and whether or not it's credible. We have long sales cycles. We have those multiple touch points. We have the offline interactions, which, even the best digital tools in the world, even if you're using 6sense and Demandbase and Bambora and all this other stuff, even AI, can't measure what's happening inside, boardrooms and conference rooms at the company, the water cooler conversations, right? So there is a lot of offline conversations and information that happens that we're just not tracking. And then again, if our data isn't clean, let alone if we have it at all, you really can't build a model without clean data. So, at least as a practical move, instead of trying to chase the perfect model, just try and get something that's at least directional. But still, I would focus more on pipeline contribution and overall revenue than I would MQL. So, of course, AI is in every conversation right now. It feels like we're in the .com era, but now .ai for everything. And AI can help a lot with statistical modeling and reaching out across different systems and helping us get closer. Things that might have taken us weeks before with Excel spreadsheets and a team of data scientists, we can now do in minutes. So that's really good. AI can help you identify high intent accounts. It can score buying committee signals that we might not be tracking otherwise, and it can predict pipeline. But you still got to get the data right. You still have to be picking the right AI tools. This doesn't mean going out and, in reference to the .com era, don't go out and start buying a whole bunch of AI tools. Use what you have. Almost all of us have Salesforce or HubSpot. Use that combined with Claude or ChatGPT. That's a great place to start. That's going to get you 70% of the way there. Agentforce is fantastic. Breeze and HubSpot is really, really awesome. And then these tools, Claude and ChatGPT in particular, are getting better by the week. So you use those, you're going to be well down the path. But I'd say the big shift that's happening now is marketers have been using AI for content efficiency and production, and great job for those of you that are, and of course for those of you that aren't, get on it. But I think now being able to use AI for revenue forecasting in 2026 will be key, and so that's going to be a really good place to start. But you got to clean up your data, and if you've been building your AI models on dirty data, well, all these years, I've been doing this for 30 years, and every company talks about bad data. I have yet to see one marketer in all this time, and I've worked with a lot of companies, well over 2,000. I have yet to see a marketing organization budget to clean up their data. We can buy data all day long. We can add new lists. We can do all that. But to enrich data, to clean it up, to spend money, almost never happens. Well, If not now, when? I mean, otherwise we're going to be building these AI machines built on bad data, and garbage in, of course, is going to be garbage out. So, we really need to do that. RevOps and marketing ops is still the right structural fix to help you with systematic forecasting and moving past the MQL. Because it's really not about an individual tool, it's about structure. And RevOps gets the right departments aligned, right? It's aligning sales, marketing, customer service, all around the customer, all around driving revenue. And RevOps' job is to have a singular aligned data model. So that's going to be really critical. Agreeing to share definitions. What's a qualified account? What's a qualified opportunity? What counts as pipeline? That's going to streamline a lot of this and will allow you to forecast better. When organizations are aligned, we see this all the time. Aligned organizations can have anywhere from 30 to 50% higher win rates because everyone's rowing in the same direction. And so that's it's not a soft benefit. That's a key math problem, right? I mean, wouldn't you want to significantly increase your close rates if you had alignment? So, but I'd say in at least 60% of companies, sales and marketing is still arguing about lead quality. And a big reason for that is you haven't really installed a proper revenue operations function. If RevOps is doing its job, you'll never have an argument about lead quality again. You'll be passionately chasing pipeline. So there's a lot of revenue marketers out there, and the good teams are doing things a little bit differently. First, they're always starting with revenue targets, not lead targets, right? They're starting with revenue targets and they're working back to programs, not the other way around. They're sitting on sales calls, pipeline reviews. They're getting out in the field. They know the deals, not just the dashboards, right? They can talk to all the specifics of the opportunities in your pipeline just as well as sales can. They're killing programs that generate noise, and they're doubling down on programs that generate pipeline. They have a single source of truth in their CRM. They could be pairing it with a data lake, and every campaign is being tied to an opportunity. They're making sure that all the buyers are mapped and in these systems so they have all the right data to start with. And they're regularly and proactively briefing the CFO with revenue language, not marketing language. So if you're watching this and you're like, okay, I get it, what do I need to do? So pull your last top quarter's top MQL sources and match them to close one revenue. What holds up? That's going to be a good place to kind of start killing your model and refining it. Sit down with your chief revenue officer and agree on 3 pipeline metrics that both of you are going to be accountable for, and revenue should be one of them. If you are doing any kind of attribution, even if it's a first touch or last touch, go ahead and audit that setup. And then, see if there's opportunities to clean it and fix it. Pick one AI tool. Again, ideally, use what you have. Use your CRM platform, use your marketing automation, and move it from pilot into production and commit to using that AI to drive to an outcome metric related to pipeline and revenue. So, when we think about it, look, the MQL had a glorious age. We all did a lot of work with it, but it's past. It did reward mostly activity. The pipeline era and revenue was always about the results. So which side are you going to be on? That's all for this week. Appreciate you guys checking in. I'm Jeff. This is Revenue Marketing Raw, and we will see you next week.